George, let me ask something first. You didn't forget to mention the deficit in your speech this week.
Yes.
You went on and on about it. But the Prime Minister's just promised tax cuts, and we all love tax cuts, that'll add $7.5 billion to the deficit. Isn't that a problem?
No, absolutely not. I think it's essential for our economic future that, A, we have economic stability so that all of you can make investment decisions and in decisions to employ people with a better security about the economy in the future, knowing there are lots of risks out there in the world. And so we've got to reduce this deficit, which is still too high. And I set out very difficult decisions, the kind of things that politicians don't normally announce before elections, including, for example, a benefit freeze, to do that. Second, we unashamedly put business at the heart of our political message. So the Prime Minister made a commitment that Britain would not only achieve but retain the most competitive business taxes in the G20. And we talked about the big infrastructure and the like that we need to achieve that. And third, and this is a crucial part of our economic package, we've got to make work pay. We've got to make sure that, as you put it in your very good opening remarks, the system works for hard-working people. That means making sure that people pay less tax, that people on low pay are taken out of tax, and that people on middle incomes too see their tax rates reduced because too many people have been pulled into the 40p tax. And I think we've demonstrated in this Parliament that we can achieve both those things, economic stability and lower taxes, not because they are in contradistinction or they are in tension with each other, but they're actually an essential part of making sure that Britain is a competitive economy where work pays and enterprise is rewarded.
Now, we've got questions from a number of IoD people from the regions around the country, and let me ask the first of them to stand up and let us have a query. Ian Mackay, Chairman of IoD Scotland.
Good morning, Chancellor. The win in the No campaign and the referendum owed a great deal to the last three UK Chancellors. Your own firm position on currency and the use of the pound, Alistair Darling's leading of the No campaign, and Gordon Brown's last-minute call to arms to turn out the vote. Now that we've got clarity on Scotland's constitutional future as part of the UK, what can be done to help address some of the economic issues which emerged during the referendum and build Scotland's economy for future prosperity?
Well, first of all, it's very good to have you here, Ian, and I think it was absolutely fantastic that the people of Scotland voted to stay within the United Kingdom, and I warmly welcome that result. Now, of course, we go forward together in the future. And the Scottish economy, actually more so than any other part of the UK, has sort of tracked the average of the UK economy. In other words, it has had much better employment prospects than some other parts of the UK and higher economic growth. I would say there are two ingredients. I mean, the first is to respect the fact that the people of Scotland want greater control over their own affairs, including their taxes, and we will honour the commitments made in that campaign. Of course, at the same time, we've got to make sure that is fair to the other parts of the UK, but the commitments made to the people of Scotland by myself, by Alistair Darling, Gordon Brown and the like, will be honoured. And then we've got to recognise that there are some particular industries which are really important to Scotland where I think we can do even more to help. I mean, obviously, North Sea oil and gas is a huge UK asset. There's a very impressive review, as you'll know, by Ian Wood, one of the great entrepreneurs of the oil and gas industry, about how we can make sure we get every last barrel of oil out of, and whatever the equivalent of a barrel is of gas, out of the North Sea. So we are going to do that and provide a competitive oil and gas regime. There are particular Scottish industries like whisky, which are huge exports for the UK, and I've taken a decision on alcohol duties which help whisky. And then there's financial services, because although financial services is a big employer around the UK, I would say that after London, Edinburgh is our other preeminent financial centre, particularly in areas like asset management. And I think there are things we can do to make our financial services even more competitive. So working in partnership with the Scottish Government, with the people of Scotland, I think Scotland now that we've put the uncertainty about separatism behind us, and now we have checked for the first time in my adult life the march of the separatists, I think we've got a real opportunity to make sure that Scotland has a really prosperous economic future.
Can I push you a bit on behalf of the rest of the country? I mean,
yes.
Committing to the Barnett formula forever, when I last looked, the only parts of the country that were net contributors to the government were the wider southeast, the east and the southeast. Aren't they going to get resentful at some point?
Well, the Barnett formula has been a feature of our national economy and national public finances for a very long time. And of course, there are areas of Scotland which clearly have real economic need, areas of deprivation and poverty which we would like to address. And so resources...
That's true of the northeast of England.
And indeed, and of course, as your question implies, we live in a country where there is solidarity in the sense that we transfer resources around our United Kingdom. That's part of being in a single United Kingdom. By the way, it happens in this city. Some of the poorest parts of the UK are right in London, in the east of London, for example. So we do transfer resources, I think, but there is an issue of fairness when it comes to English, Welsh, and Northern Irish MPs having a say over the issues that only affect them. I think if you're going to see further devolution to Scotland, which we are going to see, then we should address this question, which I'll give as a sort of shorthand, the English question. We've got to address that. The Conservative Party has pledged to do that so that English MPs or English and Welsh MPs have greater control over the taxes and laws that affect them. We're addressing that. We'd love to do that on a cross-party basis. We're exploring at the moment whether that is possible, whether there is a consensus. If not, it will be a choice for people at the election.
Let's take a question from another part of the country. I think we're going to Jason Wahura of the West Midlands, our chairman in Birmingham.
Good morning, Chancellor. Brand Britain has a great deal of equity around the world, yet British businesses struggle to compete and sell to foreign markets. What can the government do to help British business increase their exports and become more competitive in these foreign markets?
Well, if I would look at the British economy at the moment and say, what's going right? Clearly, the economy is growing, unemployment has fallen sharply, and business investment, which when I think I came here last year was a real concern, has picked up, and we have very strong business investment. So I would say at the moment, the thing that is the most obvious weakness in the British economy is our export performance. And that is something that is partly affected by what is going on in the Eurozone, which I would identify as probably the greatest immediate economic risk to us, the very, very weak growth in the Eurozone. That's where 40% of our exports go. But there is a broader and long-term issue for the UK, which is we have not connected ourselves enough with the big, fast-growing economies in Asia and South America and the like. I think too many of our small and middle-sized businesses have felt daunted about entering into export markets, and that's not the case for small and medium-sized companies, for example, in Germany. So I've thrown a lot of effort into this. We've made our export finance in the last year among the most competitive in Europe by cutting the interest rates and increasing the amount of money available. We've expanded our UK TI, and I hope but I would like feedback that you have felt that the performance of UK TI and the British Embassy network abroad has been transformed in the last few years, and it's just much stronger, and it's there to hold your hand in challenging markets. But I am the absolute first to say that the job is not done in this space. And so if you have thoughts, ideas about what more we can do, I'd say almost everything in this space, the ideas have not come from the Whitehall machine. They've come from business audiences like this that I have spoken to, submissions from the IoD and others, from the experiences of individual businesses, and that has often prompted me to take quite big government decisions on the back of it. So I don't know whether there's an opportunity today to talk more about exports, but if you have thoughts, ideas, the West Midlands, great exporting part of our UK, thoughts from there as well, and we will put them into action.
Graham Robb from Newcastle.
Good morning, Chancellor. Before I ask my question, I just want to comment that, talking to our members, the economy has reached the northeast. It's like a Heineken recovery, reaching parts of the country that other recoveries haven't reached. My members see that transport is their #1 issue. You've got HS3 proposals for the North West. They're keen that that would reach the North East. But in the light of the Scottish referendum result, would you consider devolving more of the transport budget to the LEPs in the North East?
Well, the short answer is yes. We are looking at whether we can devolve more decision-making to city areas and local communities. I mean, I don't like to use the word region so much, although I would say that the North East is probably the area of the country that most closely feels itself a region. And what I would say is that that is a direction of travel for us. We've already taken a decision to put £12 billion into a local growth fund that LEPs can bid for. And by the way, I think LEPs, after a slow start in some areas, are really now working well, particularly in the North East. And we are looking at this idea. It's something I feel very strongly about as someone who grew up in London, represents a seat in the north of England, the first Chancellor of Exchequer in almost 40 years to do that, that we need to build a northern powerhouse that is, the cities of the north collectively can be stronger than their individual parts, and collectively can make a global city. That requires fast transport links, big science investments, I think political accountability that comes with an elected mayor like we have in London. Those are the ingredients, and one of the things I said in my speech at the Conservative conference earlier this week was that reducing the gap between north and south, or London and the rest, might be a better way of thinking of it, is an absolute driving mission of the Conservative government and conservative ambition we should enshrine in all that we do. So we're very focused on that. I would just point out, and thank you for what you say about the Heineken effect, the fastest growing areas of economic activity in our country right now are the northwest of England, Yorkshire, and the northeast. So we are seeing the prosperity not just right here in the middle of London, but felt across the country. And of course, in the end, people's living standards, people's economic opportunities in life are not separate from the prosperity of the national economy. The national economy is only the aggregate of all of those things. And we've got to dispel this fallacious idea, this nonsense idea that somehow the prospects of a people can be disconnected from the prospects of the economy. When the economy fails, it's the people who suffer.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, now we go to the southwest, to Rebecca Trugarthen, who chairs our Bristol region.
Good morning, Chancellor. Lovely to have you here with us. If devolution is the food of love, do we play on? How and when will control of local taxation and processes be handed to the regions? We ask this in particular to our region, of course, because we do have an elected mayor in Bristol, so I'd be particularly interested in your reply to this one.
Yeah. Well, as I say, first of all, there is the agreement across the political parties that Scotland should have more devolution coming out of the Scottish referendum. And I can tell you that in just over a week's time, we will publish what's called a command paper, which will set out some of the ideas for further devolution of tax and spending decisions to Scotland. But I don't think we can rest there. I think we should look at what we can do to devolve more responsibility for economic decisions to city areas. I think particularly city areas with an elected mayor, as Bristol has, because there's a point of accountability then. And I think, look, the Mayor of London as a concept under two very strong-willed characters, Ken Livingstone and Boris Johnson, has proved to be a successful model for this city. So we are examining at the moment what more we can do to pass decisions to local areas, decisions, as I say, around housing, planning, potentially local taxation as well. And we have already done quite a lot of that. I'd say we've done more in the last 4 years than you've seen in the last 20 years. But it's a direction we're going to continue on, and I think you'll hear more about that later this autumn.
Let me close really with a question on Europe. We survey our members regularly, and as you know, our position is actually very similar to the government's, that our members want to stay in a reformed Europe. Some of the reforms they're keenest on are about employment regulation and environmental regulation. How much is that part of the government's reform agenda? But I'd like to throw in another one as well. The Prime Minister seems to be implying that freedom of movement could be up for grabs too. Not cracking down on welfare tourism, but actual free movement. Isn't that one of the pillars of the European Union that simply will never go?
Well, I think our position on Europe is very similar, not only to the position of the majority of the British people, and I respect, of course, the fact there are those who would like to do more in Europe and those who would like to leave Europe altogether. I also think it's actually very close to the British business community's opinion, and I think the IoD correctly reflects this. And sometimes you hear on the TV or the radio that business is against the British government trying to get change in Europe, and I don't think that's true. It reminds me very much of what I used to hear at events like this a decade or more ago, when everyone said British business was keen on joining the euro. Well, some very large British businesses might have been, but that was not reflective of the kinds of businesses I suspect represented in this room and the people in this room. I thank the IoD for pointing that out, that those who are on the front line of much of the frustrating regulation from Europe, this idea that we can be a competitive continent yet price ourselves out of the world market, comes from businesses. You are the people who see the employment regulation firsthand, the environmental regulation firsthand. And I think part of our pitch, if you like, not just to the British people, but also to the people of Europe and to the other governments of Europe, is we want economic reform in Europe, not just for ourselves, but for the French and the Germans and the Italians and the Spanish. Look at some of these economies on the other side of the Channel. I mean, they are facing real challenges. They have high unemployment. There are risks returning to the Eurozone. So we make this argument about deregulation and a competitive pro-business environment in Europe. And we do it not just for our own sakes, but because we want to live in a prosperous economy where, as I pointed out earlier, much of our exports go to. We are finding allies on that deregulation front. One of the results of the economic crisis in recent years is that European leaders and politicians and business groups and the like are much more focused on economic activity and job creation than perhaps they should have been a few years ago. So I would say that's part of the agenda. Free movement of people was never envisaged as freedom to move and claim benefits, nor was it envisaged in a European Union where there were wide disparities between the wealth of different economies in that European Union. Migration from other EU member states to the UK used to be in the low thousands, literally every year, a few thousand every year net. Whereas now, of course, it's in the tens of thousands or indeed in the hundreds.
There are more Brits living in other European countries than any other European countries living anywhere else.
So, it's important that we find a way through this that preserves what works in the European Union, including the aspects of freedom of movement that work, whilst addressing the very real concerns of many members of the British public. And so that's why the Prime Minister said this is an issue that needs to be addressed. I would make a broader point, since the clock tells me I've got 1 minute 34 seconds to do so, which is this, that of course the European issue is important and it's about the future of our economy, but as you said in your opening speech, there is a big argument in our country as well about our future, about whether we are a country that is for business, for enterprise, for the free market. For the first time in my adult life, that is up for grabs. That issue felt like it had been resolved when the Berlin Wall fell. Politicians like Tony Blair from the left felt like they had understood that free markets create the taxes to fund public services and the like. That argument has gone, and you saw it with a very stark contrast between the two political conferences of the last 2 weeks. So I would urge the business community not to sit on the sidelines of the political debate that's going to happen over the next 7 months. Doesn't mean you have to endorse a particular party or like the Conservative Party, but it does mean you have to get out there and put the business argument, because there are plenty of pressure groups and plenty of trade unions and plenty of charities and the like that will put the counter view. And we've got to have people such as yourself, Simon, on the radio as you were today, and many people in this audience out there making the case. It is, I know, a difficult decision sometimes to put your head above the parapet, but that's the only way we're going to win this argument for an enterprise, business, low-tax economy that delivers prosperity for people in generations to come.
Chancellor, thank you very much.
Thank you.